And welcome to Control Alt Deplete. All right, we are back for the first time and not a 3-month distance from the last episode. So
Yeah.
back to weekly episodes. Hopefully, we will.
Hopefully, yeah.
We will see. That's the plan going forward, at least.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am your host on the left side of your screen, Mr. Buckblind, and on the right side of the screen, Mr. Bioshock. How are you tonight, Bio?
Good. I am slept long and I'm still tired. Slept a
Right?
long time. I
I
think just
feel that.
oversleeping makes you tired.
It can. It definitely can. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I'm tired even though I slept like 14 hours.
Yeah. I got like 12 hours of sleep. I feel pretty good. But I probably need to get some sleep and not stay up all night tonight. I gotta be up early in the morning. The youngest has his first soccer game, so long as it doesn't get rained out. But that'll be fun to go to.
Rain? If there's rain,
Yeah, because they're 3. So
Oh.
if they were like teenagers, then they usually would go ahead and keep playing it. But when you're that young, they don't want a slick field and them trying to run around and stuff and anybody getting hurt.
Yeah.
But
right.
Anyway, we have a decent amount to talk about today. We got a lot of stuff going on. We got tuning and whatnot. I forgot to update the affixes. I'll get that real quick here. Anyway, we have the affixes this week are tyrannical and then afflicted. And which has been so much fun to deal with this week. We're doing a lot of alt keys, and people are not getting afflicted.
We're doing like 11s, and people still don't know the affixes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then the last affix, which we haven't really dealt with because we're doing alt stuff, is bolstering, which hasn't been too bad. Yeah, it hasn't been too bad because it's a tyrannical week and not fortified. If it was fortified and bolstering, that becomes a rough week for tanks. Because when you get to the end there, a single melee attack can come close to one-shotting you if you've got a lot of bolstered stacks.
Yeah.
And we also still, I believe, have the Twitch drop going on. You want to take us through that again?
Yeah. So same as last week, it's the like a little fathom pet, little crustacean things.
I got mine this week.
Yep, it's just 4 hours, and I think just about every streamer in the WoW category has drops enabled to this point. So
Yep.
Go and watch, get that 4 hours. It ends on April 5th.
Yes, it is at 10 a.m. Pacific daylight savings time. So whatever your time zone is compared to that, that's the time it ends. But
yeah.
Yep, go and get that if you want to have that in your collection. It's pretty easy. We've been streaming most nights, or at least I have been, so you can always watch on there. There's various ways to get it.
Yeah.
Also, we did get some data mining for season 4. We are going to have a weekly quest for sparks, so it looks like
content.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be getting, potentially, from what I had read, it looks like we're getting a spark every week.
Nice.
Instead of a splinter. So that could be, that's interesting. I don't know if that has been fully confirmed, but that's what Wowhead has been reporting, is that on PTR, it looks like you get a spark every week. Which would be cool. Make it easier to gear up and stuff and get crafted gear out there.
It's sorry to interrupt. It's nice for someone like me that's trying to get more into PvP, because like you need to make pieces of PvP into tier as well.
Right.
So the fact that like don't have to wait like a couple months to get my full PvP gear after I get my PvP gear is kind of nice. But yeah, it's just, if that's the way it works, I like that change. It's very welcome.
Yeah, now it looks like it's going to potentially rotate the weekly quest between the 3 zones. So it'll be Dragon Isles, Zerlet Caverns, and Emirdistril. So the Emerald Dream. So you'll have for the Dragon Isles, it is going to be
that cooking one. But it looks at the picture of like on the WoW head for like
Yeah,
the.
yeah.
It looks like it's gonna make
Um,
that Pokemon one. That one's kind of fun.
yeah, so for the Emerald Dream one, you have to get 100 Dream Surge Coalescence from the active Dream Surge, which is kind of dumb that that's part of it, but it's not that hard to
Yeah.
get. 50 Bloom from the Super Bloom event, complete one
That's
Super
easy.
Bloom, and plant 3 Dream Seeds of the Emerald Dream. That's all pretty easy.
Yeah, it's
You
easy.
basically just go back to doing your weeklies for that. Zeralek Cavern, is just complete the Researchers Under Fire event. Ooh, that needs to be removed. That should not be part of it. The Researchers Under Fire event is a terrible event that is never successful the entire time Zeralek was up. I think maybe one time I managed to actually complete it. It was a terrible event, so they better do some tuning on that for that to work, or else
Yeah.
remove that as a requirement because that was rough.
Yeah.
Um, ooh, loot a secured shipment from a suffusion camp. That's also awful. And completing the time rift. Nobody does the time rifts. Okay, so the Derelict Cavern week is just an absolutely
Toxic.
awful, horrible week. That is 3 terrible. So the secured shipment, that takes like 20 minutes of fighting the suffusion camp to get this, because you have to like kill small stuff until it spawns a larger thing, and then the larger thing drops like one item, and you have to combine 5 of those items to get another item, and then you have to use that item to spawn like this rare, and then you have to kill the rare and you get 1 item, and then you have to combine 3 of that item to then be able to get the item that actually unlocks the secured shipment. It's so toxic and a waste of time. If there's a lot of people there, it's not bad, but like right now, if you were to go do it, it's going to take you 20 to 30 minutes to go and do that.
Yeah.
It's not a fun thing. The time rifts, I haven't done a time rift since the second season. I did 1 or 2 during the second season. Again, it's all 3 of these are things, if you have 40, 50 people there doing them, it's not bad, but if you're by yourself there, it's impossible to do in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Now, the Dragon Isles quest is complete Community Feast, complete a hunt, and complete the Siege of Dragonbane Keep. Honestly,
That's
all
easy.
those things are very easy. Because a hunt and Siege of Dragonbane, it's easier with people, but it really isn't hard to do that. That one's not too bad, because stuff's so low as far as the NPCs compared to our gear. It's easy to go through and blast through all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll get a Cache of Awakened Dreams piece. It'll have a random piece of champion gear, gold, and equipment upgrade materials, and then it'll give you your weekly spark. And it says spark, not splinter. So we'll see. Yeah, we will see. Yeah, the tooltip says weekly spark. So I don't. That's awesome if that is the case.
I like it says you can get a piece of champion gear from the weekly as well.
Yeah, that'll be a decent piece of gear, because before it was like based off your item level, and it would like stop at like 370. That was like
what's
the cap
champion gear now? Like it's equivalent to
for season 4, champion gear would be 4. Hang on one second, let me pull this up because I've got it all mapped out already in my gearing guide. Why is it decided? 1 second. It's because I did that. That's why.
Yeah, that's
2-step verification
of a spark every week is very cool.
Yes, that'll definitely make it easier for crafting, because we won't have so many issues of just having to wait so long. It'll just make gearing a lot faster.
Yes. Get that tier ASAP.
Yes, that'll be definitely beneficial. All right, so champion gear is gearing guide. Champion gear for season 4 is going to be at rank 1. It is 493, 496 for rank 2, 499 for rank 3, 502 for rank 4. My guess is it'll probably be a rank 1 piece, so it'll probably be 493 gear.
That's very welcome from me, man. I like that.
But yeah, champion gear will go from 493, fully upgraded champion gear is 515.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, considering max item level is 522,
Now,
that's also pretty good.
now, with like not having a new zone to do quests in, I feel like flight zones are gonna be kind of hard to get early on.
Yeah, it could
You're not
be. It could be. I think honestly, and I don't know that they'll do this. What they really should do is allow us to carry. Hang on a second. Sign me out. There we go. It should allow us to, instead of resetting flight zones, I think whatever flight zones you have for at the end of the season should just carry over into season 4.
Yeah,
That's my personal opinion.
it should.
Um,
Yeah. I have these. I have those tokens from plunder from winning
right.
that gave me some coins that are in game. That I have 15, and each one coin gives 50 flight zones. I don't know if that's going to carry over to the next season or not. I'm holding on to my bag right now just in case. But if that's the case, that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, no, it'd be really, really nice if we have if they carry the flight zones over, but I doubt they
Yeah.
will. They'll
Oh,
probably be
yeah,
mean
I
about
doubt
it,
it.
and at
Yeah.
that point, yeah, I don't know. 'Cause, I mean, if you've already done the Emerald Dream quest lines, it's gonna be difficult. I mean, the weekly's probably gonna give you like 100
A
flight
little
zones or
bit.
something, but that's not very much in the long run. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, let's go into some class tier set tuning for season
Yes.
4. I know you have quite a bit of information on this because you know the tier sets and stuff. You just want to
Yeah.
ignore the Plunder Storm news on that article and just go straight to the tier set.
All
A
right. So
lot, a
about
lot of
Thunderstorm changes.
these, a lot of these are just as an FYI for people. These are just changes that they are. I don't think they've gone through yet. It's just
Oh, it's
changes
just
for
for the
the
tier
tier
sets.
sets for season 4 to kind of
Yeah.
make them in line with where they're wanting them. So, go ahead and
Yeah.
start us off.
I'll just go over the ones that I am familiar with enough with. Maybe you can go over like blood and tank ones, whatever.
Sure.
So for Frost Death Knights, Frostward Fury, damage increase by 5% was 4, but it's build up stacks. I don't remember how you build stacks, to be honest. I forgot. But when you build up stacks, it stacks up to like, ooh, I don't know. But it went from 4% to 5%. So I mean, a top max stacks is like 5%, 10% more damage, which is nice. It's welcome. The effect of Frostward Fury increased to 30% was 25. That's the one where you use Pillar of Frost. It summons a Frost and Fury down and hits everything. Originally it was 25% of how the normal Frost Fury damage is, but now it's 30, so 5% is a little nice as well. And the last piece of tier for the Frost Death Knight is the Howling Blast damage increased by 20%, and it was 10. So that's a little bit of a nice buff there for Frost Death Knights. Moving on to Evoker. They changed some mana cost abilities for Landslide and Sleepwalk. So Landslide's the route that you aim. Went from 2.8% of max mana to 1.4%. These were never an issue in PvE. I think it's more of just a little bit of a PvP change. I mean, because like mana's not an issue for devs or augmentation in PvE. It's not a big deal. Yeah, Sleepwalk went to 1% from 2.4. It's very minor changes, but it's whatever. Devastation's tier set I was actually very excited for. If you don't know, the tier set for Devastation is back to the one where you cast Disintegrating Pyre. It burns the enemy for some percent of damage afterwards. They went from 12% of the damage you deal, or 12 burns for 12% of the damage you deal, went to 18%, which is a nice buff. And the 4 set was increase your empowered abilities from 8% to 12%, which is, again, it's a nice change. Survival Hunters, the set bonus was to increase Mongoose Bite or Raptor Strike, depending on your talents. Carve and Butchery went from 12% to 18%. And your bonus damage to Mongoose Bite, Raptor Strike, Carve, and Butchery went from 40% to 50%. The 4 set was when you use abilities, you have a chance to make your next Mongoose Bite, Raptor Strike, Carve, or Butchery to deal the 50% more damage. Nice. Windwalker. I'm just going over the ones I know. But Windwalker's 2-set increase the damage when you use Fist of Fury increases your damage your next Rising Sun kick, Bane Crank kick by a 40% was 30. The 4-set is when you use Fist of Fury. Now it enhances 3 of your Rising Sun kicks or Spinning Crank kicks. And the enhanced kicks you deal with those damage abilities increase your next Fist of Fury damage by 7%. Second to 3 times was 5%. There's only a couple left that I know that'll let you get to the tank ones. I didn't see how many tank ones there were, but Shadow Priest, the damage of Mind Blast was increased when Shadow Insight triggers was increased from 30% to 40%. Now, before I finish Shadow Priest, I just want to say I'm surprised about Shadow Priest. Like they're fine. They're fine.
I think it's
like,
all just kind of tuning it to be in line with more of Season 4's item level type stuff. I don't know that necessarily is a buff as much as just balancing it.
Right. Fair enough. The 4-set to increase Divine Plague from 15% to 18%. And every 4th cast of Divine Plague increases your shadowy apparition damage by 100% for 10 seconds was 80%. And the last 2 that I'll cover is Arms and Fury. The 2-set for Arms, the bonus damage to Mortal Strike and Cleave is increased to 15% was 10, and the critical strike chance bonus remains unchanged. 4-set bonus damage and critical strike chance increased to 8% was 5. That's the it's just buffing the 2-set even more. The last one for is Fury, and the 2-set is the bonus damage and critical strike chance of Rampage increased from 12% to 12% from 10%. So a small little buff. The 4-set is the bonus damage is increased to 30% was 25%, and critical strike chance is increased to 12% was 10% to Bloodthirst. I don't remember the 4-set, so I apologize. Yeah, so I don't know if you want to go through some of the tanks. I see
for sure.
I see Prot.
Yeah, so I'll start from the top here. So for Blood, you've got 2-set bonus is basically getting double the buff. So it's going to be 20 instead of 10%, which that increases your Heart Strike and Blood Boil damage, which is good. And then the 2-set also, the chance to gain Vampiric Blood is increased to 10% instead of 5%. So a little bit of defensive buff there. And then Prot Pally, the 2-set bonus, the Ally of the Light's versatility is increased to 8% instead of 6%. And the 4-set, the Hammer of the Righteous, Blessed Hammer, Crusader Strike, increases your parry by 7% instead of 5%. So just some small defensive buffs there. And the rest of the tanks didn't get anything with the tier set bonuses. But again, the buffs, the developers note is that they've updated the power of many of the set bonuses that are returning for Season 4 to match the increased power of the rest of the new gear in Season 4. So that's why it's less about this spec is underperforming and more about, hey, the tier set for this season is really, for that season that you guys picked, is really weak compared to the gear that we're going to have in Season 4. So they're buffing it up to kind of match that.
Right.
And then something that I wanted to go through is we have a lot of dungeon tuning stuff happen. So we've got a lot of good data here, which is something I love to see. Lots of tuning. There's a lot of good changes, I think. So let's go through this. Once again, in case you didn't hear our podcast last week, or just unaware, we are having all 8 of the Dragonflight dungeons will be our dungeons for Season 4, which is, it's kind of, I mean, I guess it is what it is.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't want Ruby Life Pools, man. I don't want Ruby Life Pools. Delete that dungeon, or just change the entire way the mechanics work, because it's a beautiful dungeon, absolutely, probably the best looking dungeon, just the worst mechanically challenging dungeon. Anyway, so now Theris, they made some big changes to the way Burning Chain works. Those are the chains in there that you used to use to, it would stun the enemies for like a second, and they would do a bunch of damage. So now it will stun the enemies for 5 seconds instead of 1.5 seconds. Does no damage, but does increase the damage of those mobs that are hit by it. It increases the damage that they take by 50% for that full 5 seconds. So it's a nice big buff for us to One, I love the 5-second stun. That's actually huge. In my opinion, that's a very good buff.
Yeah.
Another change, Chargath. That's the boss with the where everybody gets chained, and you have to run him through it to break the chains. So in the past, Fiery Focus would be a circle around the boss, and if a DPS or healer went into that circle, you pretty much got one shot. So they have changed that to where now Fiery Focus is just going to deal damage to the tank every second until the cast ends, and will no longer do that AoE damage, which is that's a huge improvement in my opinion for it. Because I would say 9 times out of 10, when there were wipes on that dungeon, it was that, or on that boss, it was that mechanic. Just people would get stuck in the circle, because people just didn't understand, like, hey, the big circle around the boss, don't stand in it. And melee DPS would go and run to the boss and just go stand right in it and die instantly.
Yeah.
Now, this one here is interesting. So, the final boss, Warlord Sarga, the Curse of the Dragon Horde is a debuff that you get whenever you pick up your gold. It used to last for 5 minutes. However, it only now lasts for 30 seconds. But it stacks. So, if you pick up the buff and you don't ever get it dispelled, the next time you got to pick up your gold, if it hasn't been at least 30 seconds. So if you pick up more than one thing of gold, you're going to have multiple stacks of the Dragon Horde Curse. Now again, you should be able to dispel it, and it's not really going to be that big of an issue, I don't think. Then there's a small nerf to Dragon Eruption, just the radius is reduced to 6 yards instead of 7.5.
Yeah.
In Azure Vault, we got some nerfs, some buffs, I think. So on the trash, Arcane Tinder's erratic growth cast time. A lot of these nerfs are just cast times were increased, so you have more time to kick stuff. So this is a cast time increased to 3 seconds instead of 2. The Draconic Breaker, I think this is actually a buff, in my opinion. This is going to make it a little bit harder. Shoulder Slam now hits all players within 8 yards of the primary target, and increases physical damage taken by 10% for 12 seconds and ignores line of sight. So that is a little bit of a buff, because that was not too bad to deal with in the past. In Blade, the overwhelming energy ticks every 2.5 seconds instead of 2 seconds. Small nerf. And then a little bit of a buff to Umbra Skull at the end. Crystallize will now also pulse AoE damage every second while the shield is active. So you want to kind of burn through the crystal to get rid of those crystals. So that's going to be a little bit of a buff. Algathar Academy, only one buff in here really, and it's actually for us. So it's the blue Dragonflight buff. The blue buff will increase your mastery by 1109 instead of 912. So a little bit of a mastery buff if you use that. On the trash, you have a lot of cast times that are increased. Monotonous Lectures increased by 1 second. The Surge cast time is increased by half a second. The Mystic Blast damage has been reduced by 40%. That's a pretty big nerf. So that's nice. That was one that was almost a guarantee. That was a spell that had to be kicked, because it's AoE damage and it does a bunch of AoE damage to everybody. Right. So that was a must kick. Even with the damage reduction, it's still going to be a must kick, because it does. I don't know if this number is before or after the damage reduction, but 247,000 damage to everybody within 50 yards. That's a pretty big hit. That's on Mythic 0, so, as it increases in difficulty, it's going to do even more. The bird boss in Algathar, Croth. Firestorm radius reduced by 1 yard, so that's a small nerf. Savage Peck, initial damage reduced by 13%, and periodic damage reduced by 33%. Tanks will be happy about that. Echo of Duragosa. There's a new ability for the final boss in here called Unleash Energy. I don't know that this is replacing something. I don't think it is, but maybe it is.
I think they added that because that last boss was a joke.
Well, so the issue with the last boss, the only time that you really had an issue with it was when it would suck everybody in and it was quaking.
Right.
Because I have seen entire groups instantly wipe just due to bad RNG, and you get quaking and the everybody gets sucked in at the same time, and quaking immediately goes off with 5 people stacked on top of each other, instantly wiping the whole group. Nobody's surviving that. But quaking isn't an affix anymore, so that has been kind of eliminated. But anyway, it's this ability. She unleashes powerful arcane energy, inflicting 165k arcane damage to all players, and opens up arcane rifts in nearby locations. So we'll see. We'll test that out in PTR or something at some point, or just once the season comes out and see what that looks like. Noku defensive. We have one fix, just Destructive Shout. It's a 40-yard range, was originally supposed to have. Then we have a lot of cast time, again, increased. Deadly Thunder, Death Bolt, both have had their cast times increased. Death Bolt now has had its damage increased by 50%. But again, it's got a half a second increased cast time, so gives you more time to kick that. Desecrating Roar got buffed. It now summons 5 dogs instead of 3. That's from the Beast Caller. The Warahuna's Hunt Prey now increases damage by 150% instead of 200%, so that's a nerf. And then this one, I'm not sure. I'm going to say this is a buff probably to the dungeon. Balara, which is one of the little mini bosses before the final boss, I believe. It's Ravaging Spear. Travels 417% faster. Which that sounds like a crazy number. So I don't know. I'm curious to see that. I don't know if Balara is the little mini guy before the final boss, or if that's part of the third boss. I honestly can't remember. Let me see here real quick. It is.
It might be.
It's like one of them.
It's two.
It's one of the mini bosses. It's not the actual boss.
Yeah. Is it like one of the two?
Yeah, it's one of the two mini bosses. Yes, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. That's what I thought it was. Also, the Beast Caller got another buff, which is Sundering Slash. Now also increases damage taken by 20% for 20 seconds. So that's all for Nokud. Aldemon just had one change, which is Fiery Surge from the Lost Vikings. The damage is reduced by 50%, which is awesome because that's all the orange circles in it. That's the only part that fight gets crazy. So the damage reduced by half, which will be nice. This one I'm also very happy about. In Halls of Effusion, the Containment Apparatus's Containment Beam has had its damage reduced by 40%. That was another big hitting ability. This one is interesting. I don't think it really changes the fight one bit. Watcher Iridius, Titanic Fist, the range is increased to 50 yards instead of 15. But if you're the tank, it targets the tank all the time. So the tank should already have it facing away, and you just sidestep it. So I don't think that really changes anything there. Brackenhide Hollow. We got a lot of nerfs in Brackenhide. We got Bone Bolt was reduced by 33%, and the duration is reduced by 6 seconds. Bone Bolt Volley, the cast time is increased to 5 seconds instead of 2 seconds, so you have a lot more time to try to stun that, I think. I think that one has to be stunned. I don't think you can kick it. Decaying Roots, cast time is increased to 3.5 seconds, so that's a 1 second increase. This one, I'm not sure on this one. Tell me your opinion on this. Rotbo's Ranger's Rotten Meat now throws rotten meat instead of scented meat. I think it's just a name change. I don't.
Well, maybe scented meat makes them is like a dot on you, where the rotten meat is just a area on the ground that does not move.
So rotten meat is on the player, so it throws it at the player. Scented meat
might follow the player though.
Well, so does this one. I mean, it throws the play. The scented meat, I think honestly this is just a name change, because I believe scented meat was the exact same thing. I think they did a name change here, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look at the current Brackenhide and see if scented meat is in there. Anyway, the Rock's Hexer's Decay Totem, the Withering no longer stacks and reduces haste by a flat 2% for 20 seconds. It was a refreshing duration it stacked. This one will be nice as well. Stink Breath's violent whirlwind radius is reduced to 6 yards instead of 7 yards, so that means melee will be able to get in and have an easier time trying to trying to attack Stink Breath. The Hat Claw's Warband is the very first boss in there. The Gash Frenzy only lasts for 15 seconds instead of 45 seconds. That sounds like a huge nerf to me. The Marked for Butchery now deals damage every second instead of half a second. Another big nerf. Predatory Instincts now only increase the haste by 5% instead of 10%. Another nice nerf. And the final boss in there, the Catriarch Raffi. Withering Rot damage has been reduced by 17% essentially. So small nerf there. Ruby Life Pools. Here we go. This is where I was hoping to see some changes, and I didn't really see the changes. Yeah. So there are only 2 changes in Ruby Life Pools. The High Channeler Ravati and then the Tempest Channeler's Lightning Storm now deals damage every 1 second instead of every half second. That is good. It's a 50% nerf, basically. And then on Karaka and Eckhart Stormbank, which is the final boss in there, Inferno core damage is reduced by 25%, but the duration is increased by 1 more seconds, 4 instead of 3. I don't really think that's really that big of a deal. What I was really wanting to see changed was all the AoE pulsing damage in there, in the trash before the second boss. But alas, they did not give us any change there. So there was one change to Dawn of the Infinites, even though it's not in the Mythic Plus rotation. It says Earth Surge increases damage taken by 5% instead of 25%. So it's whatever. Nobody's going to be doing that anyway. So yeah, that's the dungeon tuning. Yeah, a lot of stuff there. There was a couple more changes they added later. The main thing is that in Halls of Infusion, thank heavens almighty, they have added a checkpoint after the frog boss. No more running the full length of the dungeon. That's huge. That's awesome to get that checkpoint. So that's much needed, I think. Other than that, let's see here. They normalized the spawn rate of Crashing Tsunami during the gauntlet. The Primalist Gale Singer. The Wind Buffet has been removed, so that's nice. Thunderstorm has been removed, and now it uses Thunder Strike. Which just does nature damage to all players within 7 yards of impact, so you can get out of that pretty easily. The Primalist Earthshaker Rumbling Earth's Rim visual will no longer clip into the terrain. There's a lot of visual changes that they're covering in this one. So that's helpful as well. Ooh, Primal Tsunami. So whenever we all get knocked away, that did occur at 100 energy, and now it occurs at 50% health. So you're only ever going to have it happen once.
Nice.
That's a nice improvement.
Yeah.
The timer for Azure Vault was increased by 1 minute. Again, there's just a lot of visual changes on here. See if there's anything here. Erupting Fissures will now follow the current target player on the Laymore boss in Azure Vault. Oppressive Miasma has been removed in Mythic difficulty. So is that still there on the Mythic Plus though? That's interesting. Let's see, those we already covered. Oh, Summon Lashers have been removed from the Shapers, so that's nice. Touch of Decay has been removed. So they are reducing a lot of the kicks that are needed in Brackenhide and some of the other dungeons as well, so that's a plus. Bloody Bite has been removed. Withering Poison has been removed. Rot Chanting Totem has been removed. Stink Breath now locks facing after targeting a player, so you can dodge it. And it has a visual while casting now. Ooh. So that was one of the issues. Remember on Stink Breath on in Brackenhide Hollow, the little mini boss right before the bridge, how he would do a little Stink Breath that would disorient players, and it would just target somebody, and you would never. There was never any visual, and it would just hit everybody in that area, and it would follow the player. Now it says it locks facing after targeting a player, so it looks like perhaps it's just going to be essentially it's going to target a player, but then that player can move out of it, and it's just going to cast in a frontal cone wherever the player originally was. So that would be a nice improvement, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see. Agathar Academy. Arcane Rain has been removed. Firestorm's frequency on Croft has been removed. Each burning chain can only be used once in Neltharis, but I think again with the change to how the chain works, that's not bad. Let's see. Grounding chain now persists on a defeated player. Oh, that's good. So grounding chain on Chargath and Neltharis, whenever the chains got in people, in the past you had an issue where if somebody died, the chain was just gone, but it hadn't exploded, so like you couldn't break the chain. It says now it's going to persist on a defeated player. So if you die and you have the chain on you, the chain will stay there, and we can still use it to stun and remove the buff from the boss. That's a plus. On the No-Kud Longbow, the multi-shot has been removed. Rain of arrows we cast less frequency. Just a lot of dungeon tuning. It does sound like there's a lot of good nerfs. Other than in Ruby Life Pool. The one place that really needs it. Alright, so hero talents.
Yes.
We covered some of the what did we cover? We covered some Evoker hero talents and some of the Druid talents last week. So This week we've got 4 more sets of hero talents for you. So
yes.
Take it away, Bio.
So I think I'm looking at the notes. We'll do my DKs, and then you'll do your DK third, and then keep the DKs together, and then you do your DK.
Yes, yeah, that's not. Yep, that's fine. That makes sense.
Okay. All right, I will start with the Unholy and Frost DK one, and then we'll go to the Blood and Frost. So you have some input for that one as well.
All right.
So I gotta say, for the Unholy and Frost Death Knight tree, it's got the coolest name, Rise of the Apocalypse.
It is a very good name.
Very, very, very cool name, and its theme really matches the Death Knight theme, which is pretty cool. Starting off, you have the main notability you get first, called Rider's Champion, and spending Ruins has a chance to call forth the aid of one of the horsemen for 10 seconds. There are 4 horsemen, and they each do different things. Morgraine casts Death and Decay's location that follows his position. Whitemane casts Undeath on your target, dealing Shadow Frost damage per stack every 3 seconds for 24 seconds. And each time Undeath deals damage, it gains a stack, and it cannot be refreshed. You have Trollbane that casts Chains of Ice at your target, slowing the movement speed by 70%, increasing damage they take from you by 5%. And the last horseman is Nazgrim. While Nazgrim is active, you gain Apocalyptic Conquest, which increases your strength by 5%. I will go down the left side of the tree first. We have mobility here, and people are really happy about this one. We have On a Paler Horse, which means while outdoors, you're able to mount on your Death Charger in combat. So the way people think it's going to happen is if you are out in the world, you can stay mounted and keep fighting and questing and never have to leave your mount, which is pretty cool. There's Death Charge, which replaces your Death Advance. Basically, it gives you a Death Charger and makes you immune to movement and parrying effects, and you go 100% increased movement speed. But it only lasts for 10 seconds, so it's nice, but I think the On a Paler Horse is better. The Death Charge might be better for raid if you're not outside, so you get that movement speed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the On a Paler Horse, and we won't know until Alpha comes out and people will test it. Yeah. I still think the way it works is that you're going to be able to mount up, but I don't think like you'll be able to fight while you're mounted. I think if you use,
think you'll be able to.
I don't think
but
that
we'll
makes
see.
any sense. I think because the way it is to be able to, it's supposed to be a movement ability basically is what this talent looks like. And I think what it is that you can mount up so that you've got your mounted speed and can get out of whatever you need to. But I think as soon as you actually, like, let's say you drop Death and Decay, it's going to dismount you anytime you use a combat ability, just like it would if you were on a regular mount. I think all this is doing is it'll allow you to mount up in combat, run out of something. So if you need to run from one side of the platform or whatever to the other side, you can mount up, run to the other side, and then start fighting and drop
Yeah,
out of. Now, I don't see
we'll
it
see.
allowing. I
The
just
Death
don't
Knight
see
community
it.
thinks that you can use it while in combat,
I
but
don't
we'll
see
see.
there's any way that it's going to let you stay mounted in combat because that is too overpowered.
Yeah, I
Because
don't know. Just a
I
wishful
think,
thing.
yeah, I don't think that's how it's going to work. Because it doesn't
We'll
say
find
that
out.
you can stay mounted. It just says you're able to mount up while you're in combat. Which to me just means you're able to use your mount and mount up, and then as soon as you start attacking, it's going to dismount you. Because that's just that's the same way that Guardian Druid's travel form works. Is you can use it in combat, and you get a faster movement speed, but as soon as you start attacking anything, you're automatically brought out of travel form.
I mean, we'll see. I don't know. A
Yeah,
lot of the community thinks you can use it while attacking, but
I
I
think
mean,
they're
we'll
all
see
wrong
in
because
alpha.
I don't
We'll find out later.
I just don't see any way that they allow that to happen because that's way too strong.
Yeah, we'll see.
Having 200% movement speed the entire time you're in combat, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like,
we'll see though. Moving on, we have when your diseases deal damage to an enemy afflicted by death, which is one of the one of your spells. It gains another stack additionally. So like you're in death, like from your res champion. Um, when it deals damage, it also affects the nearby enemies, so just spreading naturally. The third one is the damage of diseases, frost strike, and death coil increased by 15%. That's just a nice little buff. Going to the middle tier, we have Morgraine's Might, which increases your damage by 5% while you are inside the effects of your Death and Decay. And that includes Morgraine's Death and Decay as well. We have the Nazgûr's Conquest. If an enemy dies while Nazgûr is active, the strength of the Apocalyptic Conquest increased by 3%. Additionally, each rune you spend increases value by 1%, so it's just stacking strength buff. It's nice. This is another choice node here. We have Fury of the Horseman. Every 50 runic power you spend extends the duration of Horseman's aid by 1 second up to 5 seconds. So with full cooldowns, you can get your Horseman from 10 to 15, or the last talent from 20 to 25. Or you have a Feast of Souls. While you have 2 or more Horsemen aiding you, your runic power spending abilities deal 20% increased damage and have a 10% chance to refund a rune. Now, I'll go down to last talent so it makes sense for this tree because it kind of went over a little bit. But the last node is called Apocalypse Now. When you cast Army of the Dead or Frost and Fury, you summon all 4 horsemen to aid you for 20 seconds. So then you get the Feast of Souls. When you have 2 or more, you get all the damage increase. So you always have that when you have your cooldowns up, which is pretty nice. I am going to say I like this tree a lot for Unholy more than Frost. But I got to say Army of the Dead's an 8-minute cooldown. And Frost and Fury is a minute and a half. That being said,
well, does Army of the Dead still get reduced quite a bit anymore? Or does that no longer get reduced?
Well, yeah, I'll get to that 1 second.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in a boss fight in a raid, your death coils reduce your Army of the Dead by like 5 seconds per death coil. Army of the Dead's an 8-minute cooldown, and I think death coil reduced it by 5 seconds per death coil, maybe 6 seconds, I think.
Okay.
So when you're attacking, I noticed time wise, if you're in combat 100% of the fight for like duration, you can get the 8 minutes to about 3 minutes. That's what I was doing on in raids. When I was doing the raid, I'd get about 3 minutes on my Army of the Dead, which is nice. But in a dungeon, it's gonna be probably I bet you it'd take about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm not quite sure, but it's not too bad. I think because Frost and Fury is a 3-minute cooldown, but you talent it to make it a minute and a half.
Right.
So the Apocalypse Now is really strong for both, obviously, but you have more uptime on Frost, I believe.
Now, is the tier set for DKs, is that the one that's gonna make gives you the Frostworm Fury on like your, what was it? There's some yeah. Is that the tier set you guys are getting or no?
Yeah, it's a tier set for next season, yes.
Okay, so that'll also, if you have any ability like that in War Within, that, you know, if you still have that ability at some point, maybe they make that into a talent or something. That'd be also make that strong as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think this talent tree is good for Frost as well, but I think it's better for Unholy.
Right.
Just like especially the Hungry and Thirst, because increase your diseases and Froststrike and Death Coil by 15%. Your diseases is Unholy is one of your top damaging abilities, and Death Coil is up there as well.
Right.
For Froststrike hits hard, but it's not as hard as like some of the diseases aren't gonna hit as hard either. It's just how it is, but it's still definitely good. I think having the 4 horsemen up more often for Frost would be really nice for them. But I'll get into the last 3 talents.
All right.
On the right side of the tree, we have the Horseman's Aid. So while you're the aid of your horseman, they'll occasionally cast Anti-Magic Shell at 80% effectiveness. So there's a little bit of an defensive there.
Nice.
Or you have Pack of the Apocalypse. When you take damage, the 5% of the damage you take is redirected to each active horseman. Now, it sounds okay, but it depends on how much health these horsemen have, because you don't want them dying, right? Like, you don't want them to take damage from you and then end up dying, so you don't get the full duration of them.
Right.
Like, we're not sure how much they have health-wise, so who knows? Might not be.
Yeah, I mean, also, you know, if you're good and you don't take that much damage, it's not going to be that big of an issue.
Yeah, true. We have Trollbane's Ice Fury. One, you obliterate or Scourge Strike a target afflicted by Trollbane's Chains of Ice. It shatters, dealing Shadow Frost damage to nearby enemies and slows them for 40% for 4 seconds. Just a little bit AoE there. The last talent for Ride of the Apocalypse is Mossborn Menace. The cooldown of your Horn of Winter and Unholy Blight is reduced by 15 seconds, and Death and Decay is reduced by 10 seconds. People are pointing out that with this kind of talent tree, for Frost specifically, you could probably run Breath of Sindragosa. So because you can use Horn in the Winter more often, it makes it a 30-second cooldown as opposed to 45. But I mean,
true, yeah.
Who knows? And then Holy Blight's nice. It applies your dots to everyone without you having to click Outbreak, and it stacks an extra debuff on them as well. Makes that a 30-second cooldown, which is nice.
Yeah.
Another thing to point to.
Sorry,
one thing to point out that they said in a blue note was that they are 100% going to change how D&D works to make it more like, we don't know exactly what they're going to do. They've been assuming they're going to make it so it's easier to like continue cleaving targets, even if your tank moves them out of Death and Decay kind of thing. But we'll see.
Yeah, that was actually the same thing I was going to touch on, was like reading the Rider's Champion talent, where you have Death and Decay is cast at Mograine and it follows him. That's all they got to do. It's just make Death and Decay. When you cast it, it follows the decay around. So obviously, right there, they can do it because they're doing it with Mograine. If you make that into a talent, like say that it just becomes a talent that you can pick, and hey, you pick this talent, your Death and Decay now follows your DK. Like, that's gonna be a very simple solution. Have it as an early on talent, you know, very, very simple solution there. That would make it so much easier for Blood DK, because that's my biggest gripe with Blood DK. It's just the way Death and Decay is just, it's in a spot and it has such a long cast time, and you have so much, so you have to be moving all the time in Mythic Plus almost, so it really becomes difficult. So yeah, no, I think right there, that Mograine thing. I'll also say I really, really do like the theme of that talent tree. Just having the 4 horsemen up there with you, I really like. I think it's going to look pretty cool, especially if like we can all see them up there. I think it's going to look really awesome seeing all the different DKs with you. And I'm curious if they will benefit not necessarily from AoE heals like Chain Heal or Wild Growth, but if they'll benefit from like AoE heals such as like Efflorescence, Healing Rain, those kind of like where it's just an AoE circle and there's no limit to who can get healed by it. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think you'd want them to take up healing on stuff that like it'll heal up to 5 targets, because obviously you want that to be on the actual players and not NPCs. But if they can benefit from ground AoE heals that just is supposed to heal anybody standing in them, that could be a nice big way to still be able to use that Pact of the Apocalypse talent, and then they don't take that much damage. Just a thought.
Yeah. It's nice. I like the theme is really cool for sure. I think it really matches like the unholy vibe.
Yes, I like it a lot.
All right, continuing on. We're going to the Deathbringer Town tree, so me and Buck will cover this. It's the
Yep.
Blood and Frost Death Knight tree. And we'll just jump right into it. So the first number you get is called Reaper's Mark. Requires 2 ruins, the 1-minute cooldown, and it viciously slices into your soul of your enemy, doing Shadow Frost damage and applying Reaper's Mark. Each time you deal Shadow or Frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark. After 12 seconds or reaching 40 stacks, the mark explodes, doing damage per stack. It's nice to point out, they say Shadow or Frost, and from my understanding, from seeing the other Death Knights talk about it, your Shadow Frost abilities, you'll see in the other towns, count towards both. So, if your abilities use Shadow Frost, it has a Shadow stack and a Frost stack. So it'd be 2 stacks per 1 ability kind of thing. Which is nice. Again, sorry. The Reaper's Mark travels if it travels to a nearby enemy, if the target dies or explodes below 35% health. If there's no enemies to travel to, the explosion if there's no enemies to travel to, it just doesn't travel, obviously, but the explosion can only occur every 3 minutes. This talent right here looks really nice. It's called Wave of Souls. When you use Reaper's Mark, it unleashes a dark wave towards your target and back, dealing Shadow Frost damage both ways to all enemies caught in its path. And Wave of Souls critical strikes cause enemies to take 5% increased Shadow Frost damage for 15 seconds, second to 2 times. And the wave always has a critical strike on its way back towards you. So you'll have a lot of Shadow Frost damage increased to 10% for like tons of targets.
So my question on that first talent is,
Yep.
I feel like that's kind of weak for blood DK, because from what I remember, I'm pretty sure blood boil is the only thing that does shadow damage. Everything else that we have is physical damage. Death Strike, let me check. It's maybe Death Strike.
So for Blood Plague has a 30% increased damage as Shadow Frost as well. So
Yeah,
you'll have the
I was
blood.
looking at getting the stack. Like the only thing, because like blood, because Death Strike and Heart Strike, which are 2 abilities that we use the most, and Mirrorin, all 3 of those abilities are just physical damage. There's no like magical damage, so those wouldn't give us anything on there. So yeah, I mean, just be Blood Boil, and probably Death and Decay is probably shadow damage as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was interesting, because it seems kind of weak.
So yes, you have Blood Plague deals 30% increased damage to Shadow Frost, and then you have Blood Boil deals Shadow Frost, which means each Blood Boil will stack 2 stacks as well on your target. So it's just a little bit more, but I think it'd be easier to get the stacks as Frost for sure.
Was there a hero talent that makes Blood Boil do? Okay,
Yeah,
I see.
top
Yeah,
right.
Bind and Darkest. All right, yeah.
Yeah. Which will
Yeah, I
help get
mean,
stacks.
yeah, that'll help. And like Blood Boil has a pretty low cooldown. It's like a 4-second charge cooldown, I think. So I mean, I have Blood Boil up quite often, so it's pretty easy to do. So it's not terrible, but I was kind of thinking like, because for like a Frost DK, your Obliterate is Frost damage, right? And your Frost Strike is Frost damage, and your Howling Blast is Frost damage. It's like almost all of your abilities are Frost damage, and the abilities that we have as a Blood DK typically aren't.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so going down that left side of the tree after Wave of Souls, which Wave of Soul looks really good, but yeah, we have Shuddering Soul. So Reaper's Mark explosion causes a piece of the target soul to tear out and spiral outwards, dealing 10% of the explosive damage to enemies it passes through. Enemies hit by this effect deal 5% reduced damage, reduced physical damage to you for 10 seconds.
It's not too
It's a
bad
nice
for a
little,
tank then. Yeah.
yeah, it's a nice little damage reduction for tank. It's, yep. And then this is a really important node. This next one, we have Swift End that makes your Reaper's Mark cost 1 reduced ruin, so it costs 1 ruin,
Okay.
and its cooldown is reduced by 50%, so it's a 30-second cooldown. So you have Reaper's Mark up pretty much every pull. 30 seconds, and that works really well with your Wave of Souls to do a lot of AoE as well. So I think for Blood especially, well, Frost as well, but for Blood building threat to use Reaper's Mark, and then it does Wave of Souls and it hits a bunch of stuff, and that's just a lot of damage and a lot of threat you can get pretty quickly, I'd imagine.
Right.
The second talent node of Swift End is Painful Death, where Reaper's Mark now explodes at 50 stacks instead of 40. And the first Scythe of Exterminate has a 100% increased chance to apply Reaper's Mark. Now, I'll get to Exterminate next.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I was about to ask what that is.
So, we'll get to that. Exterminate. After Reaper's Mark explodes, your next Marrow Rend or Obliterate costs no ruins and summons 2 Scythes to strike your enemies. The first Scythe strikes your target for physical damage and has a 15% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. The second Scythe strikes all enemies around your target for Shadow Frost damage. So this Painful End to increase the first Scythe Exterminate proc chance is 100%. So it just goes from, my understanding, from 15 to 30%.
Yes,
chance
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So I still think Swift End's better to have it on a 30-second cooldown.
I agree. Yeah, I think that would be better.
And it's nice because Pillar of Frost is 1 minute cooldown and Reaper's Mark is 1 minute cooldown. But when you use when you hit with the critical attacks, like Obliterate, reduces the cooldown on your Pillar of Frost, so you can get it to like in a straight up fight, you can get to like 40 seconds or so. So realistically, you can have Reaper's Mark for every Pillar of Frost, which is pretty cool. We'll go down the middle screen now. We have Blood Fever for blood. And the blood one is your blood plague has a chance to deal 30% increased damage to Shadow Frost. And then Frost Fever has a chance to deal 30% increased damage to Shadow Frost as well. Now, like I was saying before, Shadow Frost damage counts for 2 stacks for both Shadow and Frost on your Reaper's Mark stacking. On your Reaper's Mark stacks. Next talent we have Grim Reaper, and Reaper's Mark Explosion deals up to 30% increased damage based on target's missing health, and applies Soul Reaper to targets below 35%. Soul Reaper is your execute talent that when they're below 35%, after like 6 seconds it explodes. So
yeah, it's a talent we don't use as Blood DK.
Yeah, it's not even used as Unholy or Frost, so it used to be good. It used to be good back in the day when it first came out, but it's really not that good
now
anymore.
I mean, this sounds like this is just going to automatically apply it without us needing the talent, so that's a plus.
It's nice, yeah. Okay, next is Dark Talons. While Icy Veins is active, your abilities that spend runic power deal Shadow Frost damage. That means spells like Frost Strike will hit for both Shadow Frost. Breath of Sindragosa hits for both Shadow Frost, which is huge, and Glacial Advance hits for Shadow Frost as well. That's for Frost. I don't know about Blood. I don't know what runic power abilities deal.
Yeah, so that's just Death Strike and technically Death Coil, but I mean, if you hit Death Coil as a Blood DK, you're dumb. No offense to Blood DKs out there, but Death Coil should be 0 cast in a fight for a Blood DK. No, all of your finish go to Death Strike. Now, what I don't understand is Icy Talons. That's
like a talent tree when you're doing the abilities.
Blood DK
attack speed.
Blood DK.
It's in the class tree.
Oh, okay, it's not a cool. I'm thinking you said Icy Veins, and I was thinking the Icy Veins cooldown.
Icy Veins, Icy Talons. My bad.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our when we use Death Strike, it applies a stack of that. Okay. Yeah. So we have up to when we. Now I like that Marrow and Heart Strike have a chance to increase the maximum stacks of active icy talons.
Yeah, so you go from 3 stacks to 5 stacks.
Yeah, I like that
increased stack
potentially.
speed.
Yeah, yeah, because
So I
because
think that
right
ends
now
up being
for Blood
uh-huh.
DK, Death Strike is the only thing that puts Icy Talons up. When we use Death Strike, we get a stack of Icy Talons. So it's one of the things I track with the weak ward. It's make sure I've got that active at all times, which is pretty easy to keep it up when you're in combat, but it drops off very fast when you're out of combat. So you're trying to get it back up when you come back in.
I believe it's with the 2 extra stacks. It's 15% increased stack speed, I believe. I think 15 is what? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I'm
it's
not
15.
sure.
I'll have to look, but
Hang on one second.
next,
I can tell you as far as that goes right here. Where is it? What tree is that on? There it is. Yes, yeah, it's 3%. So that'd be 15%. You're correct.
okay, cool. Yeah, so Blood, the Marrow, and Heartstrike has 20% chance to increase the maximum stacks. For Frost, consuming Killing Machine, which is like your Obliterate crits, or your Rhyme, which is your Howling Blast damage increase, have a 20% chance to increase maximum stacks as Icy Talons as well. The other node here is Wither Away, where Blood Plague deals this damage in half the duration, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Blood Plague. Then for Frost, it's the same. Frost Fever deals its damage in half the duration, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Frost Fever.
Interesting.
Yeah. Last row here is the far right. We have Bind in Darkness, where Shadow Frost damage applies double stacks to Reaper's Mark and quadruple stacks when it's a critical strike. So that's where the Shadow Frost gets the double stacks I was talking about.
Yeah. Now here's
from this talent.
quick question on this, and I think I know the answer. It sounds to me. I just want to say what I think it is. It sounds to me like the way it's going to work. So for like each time you deal Shadow or Frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark. It sounds like if I use Blood Boil, and that hits 5 targets. Well, yeah, that too. But like if it hits 5 targets, I'm gonna get that stack for each target that's hit, not just for the use of Blood Boil.
No,
right?
it only stacks on targets afflicted by Reaper's Mark, which is 1 target. Because Reaper's Mark applies the debuff that explodes.
But it just says that each time you deal Shadow or Frost damage, it doesn't say that it has to be your Reaper's Mark target.
I'm like pretty positive from my understanding that it's just going to apply to your attacks on the Reaper's target.
I mean, if that's the case, then you're never going to hit 40 stacks as a Blood DK.
Yeah.
You have 0 chance of hitting that because it would make sense if Blood Boil, like if it's just every target. Yeah, I don't know. It's something we have to test because I mean, to me, it doesn't say that it has to be dealing to that target. The tooltip specifically just says each time you deal Shadow or Frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark. Now, I understand what you're saying. It does make sense that it would need to be that target. But yeah, it'd be nice if it was just anytime you deal that type of damage, because in Blood Boil, when you use your 2 charges, there's, on 5 targets, there's 20 stacks right there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, if it is just that target, then honestly, I think that makes this ability really this not we'll wait until we see the Sand Lane tree, but that makes if your Blood Boil will only count for hitting 1 target, and it has to be that specific target, this whole hero tree is immediately about 10 times weaker for Blood DK.
Yeah,
because you're never gonna get more than 5 stacks, 10 stacks by the time you hit 12 seconds.
I know it doesn't. None of the senses makes it any better, but regardless of how many stacks you have, it will still explode.
Yes, but it does damage based off of your stacks, so it's going to be it's going to explode. It's just very weak. Yeah. Like I personally think it's got to be. I think it's going to be where it'll work for if you hit Blood Boil and you hit 5 targets, that's going to be 20 stacks. That's or 10 stacks. I mean, I think that's what it makes sense. Otherwise, I don't see any way that a Frost DK is going to hit 40 stacks either.
Well, the quadruple attacks on, so you have your Frost Fever trying to takes us 2 stacks, And then with Pillar of Frost, your Obliterate will add 4 stacks. So every like second, every global, you're getting 6 stacks during cooldowns. I mean, I'm not saying you'll get it every time, but
Yeah, I'm just saying, like,
I think for
mathematically
Frost, you can.
speaking, for blood DK, mathematically speaking, you're gonna be able to do a blood boil 3 times in 12 seconds. So like, or maybe 4 times. So you're talking 8 stacks is all you're gonna get.
So you got the blood boil, then you have your plague, your disease that'll add 2 stacks per tick as well. Now, I'm not trying to say it's going to make it any better. It's just
Yeah,
that'll
again,
help
I
a
mean,
little
you're
bit.
talking maybe then you get to like 15, 16 stacks. It's very, very weak if it only hits the one target with the Reaper's Mark. I think it's got to
Well,
be AoE counts as well. Like, your Howling Blast should count for every
eh,
target it hits. Like, yeah, I think
I wish. I don't. I don't think it will. I
there's
think it'd be
nothing that
nice.
to me, there's nothing that indicates it won't. Like, the way the tooltip reads, it doesn't say each time you deal shadow or frost damage to your Reaper's Mark target. It just says each time you deal shadow or frost damage.
We'll find out. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's going to be the AoE. I'm calling it now.
I say we'll see. I don't think so, but we'll see. We'll see when Alpha comes.
I think it makes sense for it to do work that way rather than to just be the one target.
I don't know. Anyways, for Frost, Ryman powered Howling Blast deals Shadow Frost damage, so it's some more stacks there. Blood Boil deals Shadow Frost damage, so stacks. This is a defensive one, which is kind of interesting. You have Death Bargain, so when you suffer a damaging effect equal to 25% of your maximum health, you instantly cast a Death Pact at 50% effectiveness, but it only happens every 2 minutes. When Reaper's Mark explodes, the cooldown of this effect is reduced by 5 seconds, which is not huge. The second choice here is called Rune Carved Plates, and this is a good one for blood. You'll like this one. Each rune spent reduces the magic damage you take by 2%, and each rune generated reduces physical damage taken by 2% for 5 seconds and up to 5 times. You have 10% reduced magic and physical damage taken, which is nice. The last talent, we have Death's Messenger, reduces the cooldown of Lichborn and raised dead by 30 seconds, pretty weak. When an enemy deals direct damage to your anti-magic shell, their cast speed is reduced by 10%. So my opinions about the two trees, I think Ride of the Apocalypse looks really good for both Unholy and Frost. I think it's a little bit stronger for Unholy. Deathbringer, I do think it's better for Frost than it is for Blood. I think if a Frost definitely had to pick between Ride or the Apocalypse and Deathbringer, I think Deathbringer is better. But yeah, that's it for those DK hero talents.
Very, very nice. Yeah, I was looking at the writer's guide on Wowhead for that, and they're saying the same thing. Like, they don't know whether it's going to count for all the targets or just the one. They said tooltip's very unclear on it.
Right.
So yeah, once Alpha comes out, that's when we'll be a lot of the answers. I think that's kind of one thing that I think I'm having an issue with some of the way this stuff is set up, is like, a lot of the stuff that Blizzard has put out so far is, there's a lot of questions. It's almost leading to more questions than answers, and it's answers that you can't get until Alpha's out.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this right now. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I think it's gonna work single target. I like it to work AoE for the Death Mark, the Reaper's Mark, because then like Howling Blast and Blood Boil can give you mad stacks, and it'd be really worth it to use it more in like big AoE fights. I think that'd be really awesome. I said I don't know if it'll happen. But if it does work the AoE well, it's very welcome. Then you get mad stacks, it'd be great. I just think I think it might be a little too overpowered. If you can get 40 stacks in like 5 seconds.
I don't think that's really an issue though, because again, it's not like you're going to be getting 40 stacks and exploding every 5 seconds. It's just however whatever your cooldown is. It's only going to happen once for your cooldown. The difference is how strong will it be. And I feel like why would you put a 40 stack cap unless you intend for people to meet that cap? Like if it's impossible to get more than 20 stacks into 12 seconds because it's only on one target, why is there even a 40 stack cap? I feel like that's why it's there, is that way like you could pull 10 mobs, pop blood boil, and there's 20 stacks right there, pop a second one, boom, it explodes, instant great threat generator for blood DKs.
Yeah, I'd love it to work that way, to be honest.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's who knows which way it's going to work. It could be, yeah. So right here, the guide writer is actually saying over 12 seconds, with it only working on the one target, the max that you can get from playing your rotation perfectly is 34 of the 40 stacks.
Right.
So like that to me makes no sense for that to be the case.
I think if they want it to be a single target effect, they'd have to make it last longer than 12 seconds.
Yeah.
12 seconds is fine if you can. If 12 seconds is fine if you can do AOE and make it stack up. But if it's all single target, 12 seconds really isn't that long. That's 12 global. That's 12 GCDs. You know.
Well, and also in lower keys, that whole thing is going to be negated if everything dies in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know.
But I do gotta say, I think I didn't quite go over this well enough for the actual Reaper's Mark ability. If the Reaper's Mark travels to an enemy, if the target dies or explodes below,
and it carries on,
which is nice. But I mean, it can only spread every 3 minutes. So, but
yeah, the explosion. So it'll explode, but if an enemy hits 35% health and there's no enemies travel through, but it just says now. So again, and this is where they're unclear in the tooltip. It says the explosion cannot occur on a target for 3 minutes. I'm assuming that just means any target. It just can't assume. But I don't know why they wouldn't say that. Why they put on a target in there. That makes it almost sound like it can't happen on that target for 3 minutes, but like it's dead if it's still alive in 3 minutes. Like, you know, something's wrong. Yeah, it sounds like just that part of it only works once every 3 minutes, and I think that makes sense. Yeah, because like what I'm seeing from this thing is if it is AOE works for it, then Blood Boil, this makes a great quick threat generator for blood DKs right off the bat, because you can get, you know, depending on how big your pool is, you cast a couple of Blood Boils, and then your Blood Plagues, you should be able to get it to go off with 40 stacks within like 6 seconds probably, and then you have a nice big threat generator.
I think, like I was telling you before, I don't know if you saw that, but another really huge threat generator for blood is the Wave of Souls.
Yes, yeah. That one looks really good too.
Every Reaper's Mark is going out and does damage going out, and then coming back does crits, like guaranteed crit on everybody, and it increases damage to take with 10% for 15 seconds. It's like it's no build up for that either. Like it just goes when you click Reaper's Mark. So I think if you could like pop Reaper's Mark and get Wave of Souls rolling while Blood Boiling to get max stacks in like a couple seconds for burst, that'd be insane damage, and like for both Frost and Blood.
Yeah,
the threat you would generate as Blood would be insane.
Yeah, I think the Deathbringer one has really good potential in Mythic Plus if the AoE counts. If the AoE doesn't count, I mean, it still might be pretty good, but yeah, if the AoE doesn't count, it really, really limits blood DKs, because again, playing it perfectly, you're only going to get 34 stacks before it explodes. And that just seems really, really bad. All right, so moving on to San Lane, which is the third hero talent tree for blood DKs or for DKs. This works for Unholy and Blood DKs. Now, also, quick note, I don't know if we mentioned this already. From what we are seeing, I think we mentioned this last week that we weren't sure. What we're seeing is that it appears that the way that hero talent trees are going to work is that you will pick one of the two hero talent trees. And from what we've seen people saying, they're saying that you'll be able to pick every single node.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense unless you get the first node for free or something, because
Yeah.
you only get 10 hero talents and there's 11 nodes. So
Mhm.
my guess on that is that you pick your hero tree, you automatically get the first node, and then you pick your other, you get all the other ones as you gain your levels. The only choices you actually have are the ones where you're choosing between two talents, which every class for every hero talent tree that I've seen, you have 3 to 4 nodes where you have a choice. So just some clarification on that from last week.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's see what this is. Sand Lane for Unholy and Blood DK. Your Death Coil and Death Strikes have a 10% chance to make your next Heart Strike or Scourge Strike become Vampiric Strike. Vampiric Strike heals you for 3% of your maximum health and grants you the essence of the Blood Queen, increasing your haste by 1.5% up to 7.5% for 20 seconds. So that's not too terrible.
Does the stacking keep the buff up for 20 seconds? Because it doesn't say it does not refresh, or it does not. Something that like stay stacked, I guess.
I'm guessing it's going to stay stacked.
Yeah.
Because with the 10% chance, if it doesn't stay, if each time you proc it, it doesn't refresh it, you're never going to hit 7.5%.
There's
And
talents that'll make it your vampiric strike more often, but we'll get to that.
yeah. So let's see. So starting on the left side, you get to choose between Newly Turned, which causes Ray's ally to revive players at full health and grants you an absorption shield equal to 20% of your maximum health, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Then you have Vampiric Speed, which Death's Advance and Wraithwalk movement speed bonuses are increased by 10%, and activating Death's Advance or Wraithwalk increases 4 nearby allies' movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds. Starry, if you die, you're not going to come back at full health. I'm taking Vampiric Speed all day long.
Vampiric speed's nice. Yeah.
I would much rather have that than, hey, you're now at full health when I raise you, because don't die. Just don't die.
Vampiric speed makes sure Death's Advance 45% movement speed, which is nice.
Yes. Yeah, no, I like that a lot better. Infliction of Sorrow is the next talent. When Vampiric Strike damages an enemy, Vampiric Strike damage an enemy affected by Blood Plague or Virulent Plague, it consumes the disease, dealing 200% of the remaining damage. So that's a big hit right away. While Gift of the Sand Lane is active, Vampiric Strike no longer consumes your disease, and instead extends the duration of your disease by 3 seconds and deals 20% of the remaining damage to the enemy. That's nice.
Yeah.
Especially for Unholy. I think that, because I know you guys, like you said, you get a lot of your damage from your diseases. I'm not sure how much Blood Plague actually does on my blood to get. I'd have to look at that and see. Visceral Regeneration, that's the third talent on the left side. Your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike have a 3% stack of essence, or 3% chance per stack of essence of the Blood Queen to refund a rune. Ooh, I like that a lot. Vampiric Strike doubles the chance to refund a rune. The final talent here at the very end that you're going to get for no matter what is Gift of the Sand Lane. While Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation is active, you gain Gift of the Sand Lane. So how long does your Dark Transformation last for?
20 seconds.
Okay, yeah, Vampiric Blood is like 18 seconds or something. I didn't know if Dark Transformation lasted that long. Anyway, so Gift of the Sand Lane increases the effectiveness of your Essence of the Blood Queen by 100% and replaces your Heart Strike and Scourge Strike with Vampiric Strike for the duration.
Yeah, that was lit. Yeah.
What's the cooldown on your Dark Transformation? And do you have anything that reduces its cooldown?
It's 40 seconds, I believe. It's either 40 or 45, and it's just 40 or 45. It doesn't have any reduce.
Yeah, it's fairly on par with Vampiric Blood. I think Vampiric Blood has a longer cooldown, but I think it gets reduced based off of certain other abilities. All right, so middle tree, the first talent is Blood-Soaked Ground. When you are within your Death and Decay, your physical damage taken is reduced by 5%, and your chance to gain Vampiric Strike is increased by 5%.
Nice.
Frenzied Bloodthirst, this is the second talent. Essence of the Blood Queen stacks 2 additional times and increases the damage of your Death and Coil and Death Strike by 5%. So that there would make it go up to 11%? No, 10.5%. getting the 2 additional stacks. Incite Terror, Heart Strike, and Scourge Strike extend the duration of Essence of the Blood Queen by 0.5 seconds. Vampiric Strike increases the extension by 100%. Then, so that does extend it. So it could, maybe you might, but that talent makes me think that you're right, that it is only going to last for 20 seconds, no matter how many times you proc it.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that can extend it up to 40 seconds essentially, if you're able to get all maximize your duration extended, which is still, that's a long time. Then on the right tree, you have a choice between Vampiric Aura, which causes your leech to be increased by 3%. While Lichborn is active, the leech amount is increased by 100% and affects 4 nearby allies. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Bloody Fortitude. Icebound Fortitude reduces all damage you take by up to an additional 30% based off of your missing health. Nice. And killing enemies that grant honor or experience reduces the cooldown of Icebound Fortitude by 3 seconds. I don't know if that works in Mythic Plus, because I feel like a lot of stuff, even though Mythic Plus, like, technically, if you're in a dungeon, it would grant experience. I feel like in Mythic Plus, since it doesn't grant experience, it doesn't work towards that stuff. But maybe it does. I don't know. I'd have to look closer at that. I don't play my Blood DK enough. The middle talent, and on that, I still feel like Vampiric Aura. Honestly, I think I'd be going for Vampiric Aura because I like that everyone else's leech is also increased. Yeah. The middle talent on the right, the Blood is Life. Vampiric Strike has a chance to summon a blood beast to attack your enemy for 10 seconds. I like that right there. Just getting a blood beast, that sounds interesting. Each time the blood beast attacks, it stores a portion of the damage dealt, and when the blood beast dies, it explodes, dealing 50% of the damage accumulated to nearby enemies and healing the Death Knight for the same amount.
Nice.
And then the final talent on the right, you choose between Sanguine Scent. Your Death Coil and Death Strike have a 15% chance to trigger Vampiric Strike when damaged enemies below 35% health and is guaranteed to critically strike. Okay. And then the other option is Pact of the Sand Lane. You store 50% of all shadow damage dealt into your Blood Beast to explode for an additional damage when it expires. I kind of like that, honestly, better.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not.
Cool.
Yeah, the Blood Beast is interesting, but honestly, I'm just looking at this. I'm not super impressed with the Sand Lane tree.
Yeah, I don't know. It could get some tuning for sure. I think the idea about changing spells to Vampiric Strike is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this tree is more single target oriented. And just kind of buffing your abilities, whereas the Deathbringer tree for Blood TK, I mean, even if your Reaper's Mark only, like, if your abilities are only working on the one target, it still it packs a lot more AoE damage, I feel like, than the Sand Lane tree does. So for Mythic Plus, I feel like Deathbringer is definitely going to be the way to go for Blood DKs.
Yeah.
And again, if it does allow AoE damage to work as well, then that's definitely the way to go for Deathbringer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I like all three. I think I was a big fan of Ride the Apocalypse when I first released it. I thought it was really cool.
I like that. Yeah, I like it for Unholy DKs for sure.
Yeah, and for Frost, I think Deathbringer is really good.
Yeah, I'm leaning the same way. I think for Mythic Plus, on Ride of the Apocalypse and Deathbringer are your two. For no matter which spec you are, if you're Unholy, you're gonna want Ride of the Apocalypse. If you're Frost, I think Deathbringer is what you want, and for Blood DK, you want Deathbringer. For Raid,
maybe
I think Sand Lane maybe be better for a Blood DK in Raid, maybe.
Right.
Especially progression. The Sand Lane definitely seems like it's got a lot of focus on giving you some more healing. But I don't like, defensively it's stronger for a Blood DK, but let's be honest, do Blood DKs really need their healing buffed? I mean, like, we do so much healing already. I don't know. Yeah. And honestly, I don't even know if for raid if you would want that tree for unholy.
What, Sandlin?
Yeah, I still think even
I
like
don't
a
think so either.
single. Yeah, I think single target. I'd still be taking Rider of the Apocalypse.
Me too.
All right, so the last one we're gonna cover today before we sign out is Demon Hunter. We have Eldrachi Reaver. Boy, oh boy. Spoiler alert: if you're Vengeance, not very good. If you're Havoc, it's gonna be all right. All right, so the very first, the core ability is Art of the Glaive. So consuming 3 if you're Havoc or 20 if you're Vengeance soul fragments allows you to cast Reaver's Glaive. Reaver's Glaive will replace Throw Glaives whenever you proc it. And you can kind of plan around it because you know when you're going to get it, which is both good and also sometimes annoying. But anyway, you throw the Reaver's Glaive, you throw a glaive enhanced with the essence of the consumed souls at your target, dealing physical damage and ricocheting to 2 additional targets for additional damage, and it replaces Throw Glaive. Begins a well-practiced pattern of glaive work, enhancing your next Chaos Strike and Blade Dance if you're Havoc, or Fracture, Shear, and Soul Cleave if you're Vengeance. Chaos Strike for Havoc, Fracture, and Shear for Vengeance applies Reaver's Mark, which causes the target to take 15% increased damage for 5 seconds, and Blade Dance for Havoc and Soul Cleave for Vengeance deal 3 additional glaive slashes to nearby targets for additional damage. So I think from a Vengeance perspective, you're probably, well, obviously in single target, you'd want to use Fracture. AoE, you're going to want to use Soul Cleave every time if you're a Mythic Plus with AoE for that. And probably for Havoc, same thing. You're going to want to use your Chaos, spend it on Chaos Strike, and spend it on Blade Dance for AoE. Starting with the left side here, you get to choose between Keen Engagement, which causes Reaver's Glaive to generate 20 Fury, or Preemptive Strike, which causes Throw Glaive to deal damage to enemies near its initial target. Now on this thing, I think it's going to come down to, on one, obviously single target fight, you're going to want Keen Engagement, but on AoE, it comes down to how much damage does this Preemptive Strike do. It doesn't say here, but I'm going to guess that Preemptive Strike is what you're going to want to go with for any AoE fight. Second talent, Eldrachi Tactics. The second enhanced ability in a pattern shatters an additional soul fragment. One second here. Enhancing your next... Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, I think it actually... It looks like perhaps what it does is it enhances. You don't have to choose. It looks like maybe I was thinking you only get like whatever the next one between those 2 abilities, because it's essentially, it's for Havoc it's Chaos Strike and Blade Dance, and for Vengeance it's going to be Fracture and Soul Cleave because nobody uses Shear as a Vengeance. But it sounds like it enhances both of them, not just your next one that you use. So this is what made me think that, because the second enhanced ability in a pattern shatters an additional soul fragment. So you get to, I think you get to use both of them. So honestly, it doesn't matter. You don't have to pick between the 2 for single target or AoE. So that could be good. The third talent on the left side is Intent Pursuit. Casting an enhanced ability reduces the remaining cooldown of the hunt by 2 seconds. That sounds nice. I think from what I was seeing, as far as Vengeance goes, you should reliably be able to get a Reaver's Glaive every at least 20 seconds. So if the hunt is, I believe, is it a 2-minute or 1.5 minute? I think it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. I don't know why I don't know that. I believe it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. So you should be able to get that reduced by about another 10, 12 seconds probably. I don't know as far as Havoc. Havoc's, I don't know how many soul fragments you're consistently putting up there with Havoc.
Yeah.
All right, so then middle tree. You have another choice for your first one. You get Evasive Action, which causes Vengeful Retreat to be cast a second time within 3 seconds. Or Unhindered Assault, which Vengeful Retreat resets the cooldown of Fellblade.
Nice.
Now, as a Vengeance Demon Hunter, that whole talent node is useless because we don't use Vengeful Retreat. We don't talent into Vengeful Retreat typically. But for Havoc, like, that definitely is nice. I like the Unhindered Assault personally myself, because you can Vengeful Retreat and then immediately Fellblade.
Yeah.
The middle talent in the middle is you choose between Army unto oneself, which Fellblade surrounds you with a blade ward, reducing physical damage taken by 10% for 5 seconds, or Incorruptible Spirit, consuming a soul fragment also heals you for an additional 15% over time. I'll be honest, I don't know which one I would like. I don't know which one I would prefer on that one. I think I like Incorruptible Spirit, but it also just depends on how much healing we're getting when it comes to War Within. Because like right now, I don't think that Incorruptible Spirit is really worth it, because Vengeance started healing for so much. I think I'd rather just have the Blade Ward and have another damage reduction. But Incorruptible Spirit could potentially be a lot stronger if we're not getting as much healing come War Within. So anyway, the third talent is Escalation. Each successive enhanced ability deals 10% increased damage. So I think with that in mind, and it says the effect of the second enhancement is increased by 100%. So I think in that situation, you use your Reaver's Glaive. You're going to want to, as a Vengeance, you're going to want to use Fracture first, and then Soul Cleave, which makes sense anyway, honestly. Because then you get 15% on your original target. On the right side, you have Incisive Blade. When enhanced, Chaos Strike and Soul Cleave deal 30% increased damage, which again makes Soul Cleave even stronger. I definitely like that, because Soul Cleave is kind of weak damage-wise, but it's more just a fury dump as far as a Vengeance DH goes. It gives you some damage, but it's not very strong damage-wise. Wounded Quarry. While Reaver's Mark is on your target, melee attacks have a chance to strike with an additional Glaive Slash for damage and shatter a soul. So that's just extra potential souls to help you proc your Reaver's Mark. So that's a plus. And the final talent on the right side is Warblade's Hunger. Consuming a soul fragment causes your next Chaos Strike, Fracture, or Shear to deal bonus damage. So that's just kind of a bonus. You just, especially as a Vengeance, you're going to be constantly getting soul fragments. So that's just a plus right there. Little increase in single target damage. And then the big talent at the end here, Thrill of the Fight. After consuming both empowerments, you gain Thrill of the Fight, increasing your attack speed by 15% for 3 seconds and causing your next ability to deal 30% increased damage and healing. So as a Vengeance, you really want to try to time that up to pop that with a Spirit Bomb, because that's going to be so much damage and healing. So that's a big plus there. But yeah, the biggest issue with, like, it has potential for Vengeance, and it could be good. The biggest issue is that Vengeance, this whole thing is based around using Throw Glaive, and Vengeance does not use Throw Glaive except at the very start of a fight, maybe to grab some AoE threat. But you really don't use Throw Glaive very often. It's not in our rotation at all. It would maybe be part of an opener just for some threat generation. So I don't like that this is forcing Throw Glaive into your rotation. For Havoc, it really isn't that big of a deal, because you're already, your whole talent tree is based around Throw Glaive. Or the question that I know some of the writers are asking right now is like, are the talents that we have that buff Throw Glaive going to also buff Reaver's Glaive? I would imagine that it would. because it's replacing Throwglaive, but it's again, it's something that we don't have answers to, and we have to wait until beta or alpha is out and it can actually be tested.
Yeah.
Which is again something that's been an issue for a lot of these things, is just there's a lot of questions on a lot of these talent trees that we don't have answers for.
Yeah.
But overall, like I'm very interested to see what the other Demon Hunter hero talent tree is. We don't have it out yet, but I'm hoping. I was not impressed with this particular hero talent tree for Vengeance. It looks like it could be decent for Havoc. But honestly, overall, this whole town, the Aldrachi Reaver, even for Havoc, like it's a lot better for Havoc, but I don't think it looks all that impressive in my opinion for either spec. Yeah, I don't know. I think the best thing about it is the chance to, or the cooldown reduction on the hunt, honestly.
Right.
But I don't know. You have any thoughts on that one from a Havoc perspective?
I mean, to me, it doesn't really stand out as being that good.
Right.
I won't say it's terrible, but I think as far as some of the other classes we've covered, I think it's pretty weak.
Yeah, like again, that's kind of my same thought. Like I'm not impressed with it, but like it does have, like it really does make your soul, for a Vengeance perspective, it makes Soul Cleave potentially a lot stronger, and I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't like the Throwglaive being forced in there. I don't know. It just seems underwhelming. It feels like something you could have definitely improved the way that it works to actually be something more in line with what Vengeance typically are running. I mean, it could have been based around Sigil of Flame. You could have had it because both Havoc. I mean, basically, I think the main reason that it was based around Glaive Toss is that Glaive Toss is something that both Havoc and Vengeance have, and honestly, I would not be surprised if the other Demon Hunter tree is based around Sigil of Flame, because pretty much the only two abilities that Havoc and Vengeance have in common are Throwglaive and Sigil of Flame, and then Vengeful Retreat if we talent into Vengeful Retreat. But again, like Vengeance doesn't use Vengeful Retreat right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just seemed underwhelming.
I agree.
But yes, so those are the hero talents that we're covering this week. That I think is pretty much it. So how's your week in WoW been? What have you been up to?
We did a lot of dungeons, just getting the weekly done and get some chests. So did my Assassination Rogue, that was fun. Got the four chests done. I did my Hunter Survival, was a lot of fun. And I did my Evoker, which of course is a blast as well. Other than that, I got 1800 in my Evoker the other day. And I'm working on getting 1800 in my Death Knight. And that's about it.
Nice. Yeah, pretty much same. Just run several keys. I've got, I think 4 of my 6 tanks have done the weekly quests now, so I've got 2 more to go, and then an Enhanced Shami. I did try playing Enhanced a little bit. Kind of like it. It's kind of fun, you know.
Yeah, you're pretty good at it, yeah.
It's interesting to play. Something different. DPS spec for once. I like to play a little bit of DPS, but then every time we try to set up a group and it takes 20 minutes to find a tank, I switch back to tank.
Or we use bad tank in general, makes you salty.
Yep. Yeah, I've done a lot of Plunder Storm. I think I'm at 36,000 plunder now. I think somewhere in that neighborhood. Trying to get to the 100k so I can get my mounts. I've got one of them. Close to getting the second one. Still don't like the game that much. Still, I guess just like, I don't know. It's fun for what it is. Like, I don't mind it itself. I'm terrible at it, so it makes it a little bit less fun. They did increase the amount of plunder you get, so that has made it a little more bearable. Again, for me, my big thing, and I know we touched on this last week, my biggest issue is that it was hyped up as a WoW patch, and I'm sorry, it's not anything to do with WoW. It's a completely separate game, and it never should have been hyped as a WoW patch or a WoW event. It should have been, here's a new game, and here's a WoW event to go along with it. Like, look at Hearthstone. Hearthstone just had their 10-year anniversary, which is mind-blowing to me. It doesn't feel like Hearthstone came out 10 years ago. But Hearthstone had the 10-year anniversary. And was that hyped as a WoW event? No, it was hyped as Hearthstone's 10-year anniversary, and here's an extra event in WoW to help celebrate it. And that's how this should have been. It should have been, here's a new game, and then here is a pirate-themed event in WoW to go along with it. Yeah, you know. Every time I see the Plunderstorm thing on my WoW login screen, it just makes me angry. I literally was sitting on the couch and I had WoW pulled up, and I was looking over at the login screen. I was getting irritated because the World of Warcraft, like the Dragonflight logo thing that you click to be logged into there, was just sitting there. And the Plunderstorm one was like flashing and getting brighter and darker and like pulsing. I'm like, why? Why is it like just even that was just irritating me. But no. Anyway, if you want to learn more about our Plunderstorm thoughts, go watch last week's episode if you haven't already. We go much deeper into it. I won't go into it again because otherwise we'll be here for another 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that is going to be it for us. You got anything else?
Nope.
All right. You can check us out up on our socials. I'm at Twitch at twitch.tv/Buckblind. YouTube, look for Buckblind the Demon Hunter. And on Twitter, I'm at BuckblindDH. And Bio, what are yours?
Twitch and YouTube are QQ_Bioshock.
There you go. All right, folks. You guys have a good week. Get your keys done. Get your weekly done. It is getting 4 mythic dungeons will give you a random heroic piece of gear from the raid. So go get your keys done. You know, if we're on and you want to get us keys, hit us up and we'll get you some keys.
Yeah.
So, you know, until then, have a good one. We'll see you guys next week.
Later.